Alright, so this is my postmortem for the 605 course in my individual contribution for the game design. Um, it says 601, sorry, 605. Alright, yeah, so let's get started. So, let's talk about the game itself, what it was going to be, what it needed to become, and what it did become. So, the release itself, I just want to start with a note. I'm recording this at a time before its final submission. That is due to some logistics and some unforeseen stuff that happened at the very end of the release. The final release date coincides with the Jewish holiday of Passover, and I need to be out of town, which means I was not able to be near my power computer, which was able to run Unity. In addition, due to family emergency, I need to head out one day early in order to be with family, and so that Friday and Saturday I need to be gone. So I made all my contributions on Wednesday, got everything worked and polished by Thursday, and submitted to the group. At the time of this recording, the group is finishing up the main menu and the pause menu, and that's all it needs to be complete before submission, and they will be completing that in the last 2 days. And so that's just a quick note about release. And so let's talk about what the game was going to be. When we were kind of talking about the game, originally we came up with this very robust idea about playing as someone that's going to like lead a rebellion against the native people, and it's going to have all these branching paths. It's going to be this huge, complicated game, and we just realized it was not possible. And so the day after our first meeting, I came in and recorded a video explaining what I thought the game could become within a 2-week period, just because we didn't have enough time to build this large thing. So I went over some new content standards, just so you understand the game in case you haven't seen the final game result. The game was designed to be used in my history course. The ideal implementation is that the game would take around 45 minutes, so one class period, just as a one-off lesson plan for my world history course. And I was originally talking to them, and it would be this Cold War thing, and it was much more in line with my original project design. The next day, I kind of came to them. It's like, okay, what are some areas of history that you're interested in, etc. And so we arrived at the California missions as some area of history that we're all interested in, and I thought, okay, well, that's usable in my classroom. Let's go with that. And so we made new new content standards, new objectives, etc. And originally it was going to be this large thing where you're convincing the tour representative at a mission to include indigenous representation, and you'd have to bring evidence of archaeology to them, and you'd have to talk to the tribal elders of these different tribes, and it was this very large thing that could not be rushed for the sake of being insensitive to the content matter. And in addition, it would require tons of research into the Kumeyaay, Kupeño, Lutheno, and Tongva people, only one of which I'm familiar with, the Kumeyaay, so it'd be a large amount of outside information that the subject matter expert myself was not familiar with. And it was just not realistic in the time frame that we had, so the next day I recorded this. We went over it, we limited that down just to the Tongva and Lutheno people, and eventually that shaved down just to the Tongva. And the whole idea was talking about the encomienda system, which the Spaniards used to keep the indigenous people as slaves, and it was just going to focus on that. And so the pitch I gave to them was I found a telegraphy of a mission. Clearly it was made in the present day, and so we had to cut away a lot of the polygons and do away with them so that you wouldn't see any of this. But we were able to use the 3D scan of a mission. I'm not going to show you the whole video just because it's me talking about the logistics of the moment. And then I kind of give them a pitch for what I was imagining as an alternative to the gameplay. And as an inspiration, I went to this video game that came out in 2017, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It is an adventure game with stabbing and assassinations, and what's interesting about it is that they made an educational version, which they distributed to teachers for free and was included in all the commercial releases. And if you go to the educational version, I would just want to show them what it would look like. It's an open world where you choose a historical site, and then these large pillars show up, and if you get to explore the historical site as if you're really there, you get to interact with it as if you're back in time. You get to make that thing that you've only heard about abstractly something tangible and interactive as you walk through it and see the world in a first-person perspective, or third person in the case of Assassin's Creed. And then you go to these individual points. This is the Acropolis right here, to receive some type of more in-depth explanation led by a tour guide, just to talk about it. And so, just to give you a demo of that. So, first-person perspective, you get to see Socratic seminars happening in ancient Greece, and then you can go up to these individual points, and you'll be led on a tour of what you're actually looking at. And so I thought that's a very interactive way of experiencing and making sense and playing through history. And so that was my pitch, and that's what the game was going to become. And so this was super cool, but over time, of course, we had to scale it down just because 2 weeks. And so I made a pitch just because, I'm not of the philosophy that you should shoot down ideas without offering alternatives. And so, okay, if we're going to shave it down, here's a historical map of a California mission, and then I started making a 3D representation of it. And so this is a video I recorded for them. See, I started deleting polygons, but not all of them, and it's all gobbledygook. And I was able to do that, and we have that playable right here. And so this is an early prototype I submitted to the group, and we have the El Camino Real, the King's Road that went from the north to the south. We have the crops built. We have the ranchero housing and the padre housing. You have indigenous housings, men and women separated, with the children being kept in the middle. The arroyos, the gold mines off in the distance, all with a direct pathway to the ocean to display commerce. And a little prototype for the memories that you collect. If you collect these, you hear a voice line, do some type of explanation, etc. And so this was a prototype I made. This was made at, I think, March 12th or 16th, something like that. And this was a way to kind of explain what was going on. I made a little garden. I turned some of the artifacts you can get rid of into sea rocks, just to kind of, make it a little more smooth, etc. Okay, and so from there, it needed to turn into, something more interactive. In addition, we took on a new team member, and so I designed a map of where the memories to be collected with explanations would look like, and I sent included right there with all the different things that had explanations. In addition, I wrote the script, which is in purple team. Oh, C's on purple team. There we go. There. Yeah, so right there, these are the scripts I added for Annette to record. In addition, Fernanda kind of took them and made them a little bit more dramatic and fleshed them out in ways that can only really be done in the design document when we're not limited on scope. Yeah, so you're talking back and forth on that. And so I, along with Fernanda, designed the script. I created a map, which later Anne, who came in, fleshed out into something a little bit more historical. And the game ultimately got turned into the following. So what kind of actually here? Let's get back to the structure of the slideshow. So we'll talk about what it did become when I show off. Okay, so my contributions, I was a subject matter expert. I was, as the idea developed, from a Cold War thing to a convincing archaeology, collecting evidence thing, to an indigenous representation thing, to a mission tour, I wanted a way to narratively frame that. Let me just make sure we're still recording. We are. And so my idea was to use Toiparina Asusanga, which is the woman that the region of Azusa, California, or Azusa, Los Angeles is named after. And she's famous because she led the Battle of San Gabriel. She led a revolt where she united all the tribes, or most of the tribes of the Tongva people, to overthrow the mission systems, and they burned down the San Gabriel mission. It was the Battle of San Gabriel. And so I thought she'd be a cool way to kind of frame it, because she's famous, because she has a unique story. And even if we don't focus on the story and who she became, which we would flesh out in the design document, we could still nevertheless use her as an individual, real historical person that we can kind of follow the story of. And so that was the subject matter expert portion. As the lead programmer, I was the one that was most comfortable with programming. I made custom C# scripts, which I'm very, very proud of, because that took forever, and I did not have that skill set before this project, and so that took a lot of trial and error. And yeah, I was able to make it. And so what specifically I made, which I'll show off in a second, is tutorial barriers that when you complete the end of the tutorial, the invisible walls will come down and you're able to explore at your own. A Toy Porina portrait that would come up so that you could see her face as she's talking, to align best with design principles that say that that's superior ways to connect with narrative information. Made the memories collectible, but not just collectible, made it so that they could spawn the next voice clip when they're collected, and that they could play the current voice clip when they are collected. So that involved the trigger of spawning a new thing and deleting all of the same script. Memory voice triggers, I had to make it so that when an audio clip played, it would load up and play the next audio clip, just because Annette recorded them not as one voice line, but as many different voice lines, so I needed to make a script to kind of figure that out. And then I had to figure out audio functionality and map display toggles. I had to figure, kind of move around the original programming of the pause menu to make it so that when you hit M, a map will show up, pause the world, and when you hit it again, it'll come back, all without disturbing the narration that's going on. In addition, I built the world in Unity. I had to rebuild it several times, which I'll show. I got the world playable. This is a big one. And then bug fixes and troubleshoots for Annette and Anne's versions, which came in unplayable. I co-designed the script for narration with Fernanda. And I organized the file transfer through my Google Drive, because I'm paying for 100 gigabytes a month, and I had 44 gigabytes free, and so each version of the project was 3 gigabytes, and I was able to kind of organize it in that way and coordinate people on how to use that. In addition, we tried to use Unity Colab, which we spent about 2 solid days trying to get working, could not. Then we tried using Unity Build, so it was a little too complicated for the rest of the team, so we just settled on using my Google Drive. And then ultimately, just because I was a subject matter expert and I was the programmer, and because I was the one catching Anne up, as she joined the group, I ended up being the coordinator as well for the project, and so that was a lot of that. The team's contribution, Fernanda really just took the lead on the design doc, which I'm very grateful for, and she co-designed the script to make it a little bit more polished and in a way that could be fleshed out within the design doc. And that recorded the voice lines, and she added the pause menu and the main menu. And then Anne illustrated, she did some illustrations. She made the map that I had made a little bit prettier. She added some furniture to the mission. She illustrated the main menu, illustrated the pause menu, and then drew a picture of, or made a portrait of Torquerina look like an illustration. And so let's show all that out. So let me show you the final project first. Yeah, 325. Come on. Okay, so in the final build,
Finally, someone found my lost memory.
we got background noise, we got narration, we got invisible walls,
We
got
If you really
collectibles,
to uncover
memories,
the truth, you will
we
have
have
to prove your worth.
the world and collectibles within it.
My name is
I'm
Torquerina
going to stop
Epstein.
it just for the sake of recording. And so I had to figure out these tutorial walls that would go away after a certain point, so I made the script. I should probably show off the script, huh? Lower tutorial walls. In addition, I had to make a delete voice line script. and load more voice line scripts. So let's load all these in Visual Studio. Oh, too much going on. Yeah. While it's thinking about that, yeah, I guess it's a lot for the computer to have 3 instances of Unity and the recording software going while loading all this up. So while it's thinking about that, let me show off what the mission became. The mission got completely redesigned when Anne jumped in. And so she didn't necessarily understand that there's a narrative reason why there needs to be a path to the ocean, why the Camino Real is a real thing, and that it needs to connect from north to south, that the crops need to be there for a reason, that there's mass graves, not an individual cemetery. So I had to go in and kind of fact check a lot of her contributions, and ultimately I felt like I was able to capture the essence of her contribution without betraying the historical inaccuracies. And so I felt like it was good. So some of her contributions that she added to it was that she replaced the textures on this roof in this building, and she moved the crops from there to over here, and she added a copy of this house again, and she added an agave field right here. So some furniture things, and she made this wall a lot prettier. And so, yeah, I'd say Anne really fleshed out this wall right here in this agave. Yeah, and so this is what it ended up being. We got these memories all recorded with individual information, which you'll see in the final document. And yeah, I got all that playable. Let's see if I can show up. Yeah, so some of the scripts that I was able to say, there's a barrier, there's a despawn time, and the barrier time elapsed. The barrier time elapsed will increase with the time of the computer if the preset despawn time, which you can adjust within Unity, default as 10, is less than the amount of time that has been elapsed, aka if the time elapsed goes over this number, then you will destroy the barrier. Basically, this makes it so that you can delete the tutorial walls at a certain time frame. And that made it so that I could have a trigger when a voice line was over, just because we didn't have a way of making it so that the voice line would trigger the next thing, just because WAV file can't on its own trigger something. But the WAV file has a set time code, and so at a set time code within the WAV, it would move on to the next thing. Let's see if it'll let me show off the next. Okay, let's see what's going on with that. Actually, here, I don't need to do a Visual Studio, especially since it's glitching out. What I can do is I can just click on them. So, voice on memory, I made it so that on trigger memory when you collect it, on trigger enter, you'd collect the game object. There's an artifact within the programming for the Fireball script, which I had to kind of take that from. And that was mostly just because that introduced to us the command for instantiate. And so within the script, it still refers to it as Fireball, but I kept it like that just because once it's there, you can define the Fireball as the current voice line, and you could define the current voice. You can make it so that the next Fireball, which is the voice line, spawns in, and then that one can have the script again, which can load the next one, which could load the next one. And so because you can define the current voice line and the next voice line within the Fireball, and because the player would never see it, I just kind of kept it as is. Not that one. Yep, there's another one I made. Yeah, I had to figure out the key code for when you push M, and I was able to figure that out. And so updates once per frame. If you push down M, and if the map is up, it will resume the game. If the map is not up, then it will pause the game, and then and then the map will be set active to true, and and then if not, then the map will be inactive. And we have that right here. It starts as inactive, and then you push it, and then it becomes active. Actually, here, let me show that off.
Finally, someone found my lost memory.
And so
Names
that
can be
is
erased with
the
time,
final map
but memories
that
can be
Anne
passed
made.
on through
And so let's compare that
If you really are here to uncover the truth,
to the one that I made. The one I made was for the sake of gameplay, that the player can just look at a map and be like, oh, this is the rough area where a memory can be made. Anne didn't necessarily understand that from a gameplay perspective. She was insistent that it'd be a little bit more stylistic, and so we just kind of went with a stylistic choice to make it an old-timey map. Okay, and where am I in the organization of this? Okay, yeah, and so that's me kind of showing off what it was, and what I learned was that I needed to balance respecting the delegating of responsibilities and team coordinations with just the realities of expertise on quick turnaround projects. I am a very confident person. I speak very confidently, mostly just because I public speak for a living as a teacher, and so I need to intentionally take active steps to listen to other people, to respect other people's voices, and to make sure that other people are heard so that I don't drown out voices. I know this about myself. I've taken these steps my entire life. And so I kind of came into it with the idea that, okay, they don't necessarily know how to program, but they can, they have the same experience that I do. We all started from scratch within this course. And so I'm going to give them some things. I'm going to delegate some things. I'm going to respect their contributions and not step over them. And so it was a little bit difficult just because, it took the team a very long time to make these things, which for me would take very short amounts of time. And it was this kind of this balance between wanting to respect the team, but also understanding that I have the expertise and they didn't, and we have a time frame. And ultimately, I kind of came on this side of things, and I didn't respect my own expertise, and as a result, the project didn't come around quickly. It was only until a couple days before the project was due that I finally got a build where we had Annette's contributions and Anne's contribution actually put into the project that I could formalize these scripts on, because I needed the final version to add to these scripts. And what I got was very much unusable just because they didn't have the expertise to troubleshoot. As they were building, Anne added a bunch of models which she didn't realize had pre-made scenes which kept trying to load, that had scripts which were interfering with other things, and she didn't understand that she's not just downloading a model, she's downloading other things as well. And so when she added a bunch of these, the game became very much unplayable. And in addition, a lot of the models and work that I made on the mission, as I showed you earlier, got deleted. The mission's gone, the walls are gone, the stable's gone, the Padre's house is gone, the rancherio is still there. The terrain got moved up. She kind of made these mountains to cover up some of the boulders that were left over, artifacts from the telegraphied mission contribution. And I could make that work canonically just because there are mass graves, we can call these mass graves, but it kind of deleted a direct route to the ocean, which is canonical. In addition, she kind of made it more of a peninsula than she made it a path. And so there's a lot of things that I want to respect their contributions, but I couldn't make that work with what we had already written. I couldn't make that work in terms of programming just because this deleted half of what I had already made, and I can't use it because it's not playable. And it's just a lot of these things. And so I ended up having to make a hard call, and I had to use an earlier version, and I had to flesh it out. And so I went back to an earlier version that Anne made, and then I fleshed that one out. And unfortunately, that meant that Annette had to rebuild her pause menu. But when the pause menu took 3 days to create, and I could knock it out within 5 minutes, it was just this thing that I kept thinking to myself: to what extent am I being unkind to myself for making my own the amount of time that I have to build these scripts shorter and shorter as I wait for this thing that I can do, and am I really respecting them? And ultimately, I felt that all the, the intentional action to respect their voices and respect their contributions, I think that I kind of ended on the wrong side of that balance just because, unless every single thing that they made was 100% represented, they're inevitably not going to feel fully represented within the project. And so I think in the future, I need to just be more upfront within communication about the fact that I have certain expertise and I can get these tasks done quicker. And yes, I do want you to build something as well, but if I can make something within a couple minutes and takes you a couple days, I shouldn't be waiting those couple days for you to create that. We should create more different contributions that this other person can make so that these other people can contribute in ways that isn't unkind to myself and unkind to our schedules. And as I mentioned, this became an issue towards the very end of the project just because I couldn't be doing this very last second. There's a Jewish holiday commitment that I had to be out of town for. In addition, my grandmother's health was, or is at the time of this recording, poor, and I need to be heading out of town a day early, and I can't say no to that. I can't sacrifice that for the sake of this project. And so, it was that balance. That was the biggest growth thing for me, and I just need to understand that there's other ways that I could respect input without sacrificing my own knowledge of my expertise and without sacrificing the time frame, especially on quick turnaround projects. Another thing is I need to set boundaries on project development just because I had put in around, I'd say around 30, 40 hours in building this. And, if the other people within the project are spending a couple hours, that's, I'm thankful for those couple hours, but I need to be setting boundaries on how much I'm going to be willing to put in just because I felt like it very much wasn't equal, which is fine just because, I am the subject matter expert and the programmer, but at the same time, I do have these commitments that I needed to set boundaries on. And so I needed to just muster up the courage and just be direct with my team, just be like, I can't be working on this the last couple days. I need to submit my contribution for you guys to figure out the main menu on your own, and for the pause menu on your own, because that's the contribution that you had, and just I need to be trusting them with the recording of the video, and that's that. Just I need to set these boundaries, and so that's something I learned. And I also learned that it doesn't need to be this confrontational thing. That there are people too. They understand that I have things that I need to deal with as well. No one's expecting me to follow my sword for these certain things. I kind of have this unhealthy relationship with work, where I feel like I'm not actually working unless I'm sacrificing, and that's no one's expecting that. No one wants that, and quite frankly, it's not helpful towards the final goal. And so that was me learning that and learning that I can set boundaries in ways that are non-confrontation, that are helpful for communication, and that work well within the group. And then the other one was just realistic expectations within quick turnaround projects. Started very, very robust and then had to keep getting shaved down. And I felt like this project really, really helped me learn what that looks like, what the process looks like, and what the art of compromise looks like. I had to compromise a lot. The other people within the group had to compromise a lot in order to get our various voices and opinions represented. And I felt like, it's no one got necessarily fully what they wanted, especially Anne, who joined the group late and, was not there for the design portion. But at the same time, we all got elements of our contributions put into the final project. And I think I'm very happy with how it turned out. And so that'd be the post-mortem. What else have we not shown off? I'm in the wrong. 1 second. Right here. Okay, so within the purple team, I was organizing all this. We have the different versions, and this is kind of how we pass the project back and forth. Fernando was organizing these Google Docs, which we would update. What else is there to show off? So because doing this during the pandemic, we couldn't meet, we couldn't do anything. It had to be asynchronous just because we had different schedules. I ended up, as I was submitting the final thing right before I left for Passover holiday and the extra day I need to be there just to be able to get to my family quicker. I recorded this video showing off the project in its entirety, just so that they could see what it's supposed to look like when they finish extracting. They kind of had a hard time wrapping their head around the idea of files being zipped and unzipped, just because they've never interacted with that. And in addition, difficulty with downloading, importing and exporting projects is just a skill set that they were not used to. And so I put a zipped version and unzipped version just so they could have two different versions to work with, just so there was a stable build that they could access in multiple different ways. I showed off the project in visual form just so they can see what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, this video is just me playing through it, showing off the world, and hopefully they can use this, showing off the meshes and boundaries and colliders I put on. And yeah, hopefully they could use all of that. Yeah, okay, so yeah, in terms of my post-mortem, things I learned, the balancing between respecting team delegation and input, and just being real and honest and realistic within my own expertise, and understanding that in the future I need to be clear and deliberate with my expertise and how that fits into a quick turnaround time frame, and more creative with contributions of team members that don't have those expertise. I'm very proud of myself for setting these boundaries in the last couple of days, and I've learned that it is a very healthy, important thing to do, especially since my team had to set boundaries because they could only work on it a couple hours, and I could work on it for many hours just because I had that daytime free. And so they were setting boundaries, and I learned that I needed to be able to set these boundaries as well. And then I learned the art of compromise and the art of shaving down expectations to build something different within quick turnaround projects. They say that great work is never finished; it is only due. And yeah, so it feels a little unsatisfactory that it's not a perfect vision of what any of us wanted, but if we got it done within the time frame that we had, and I think there's something to be said for that. Okay, so I think that's a post-mortem, and yeah, hopefully that works.